Diplomats accredited to South Africa on the country's foreign policy. Let's now cross back to our contributing editor, Vuyo Mvogo, who's standing by with Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene in Pretoria. Vuyo, it's over to you.
Well, thanks very much, Alicia. I am indeed with the Minister of Finance, Minister Nhlanhla Nene. Among the issues that were raised by the President in his during his briefing to the diplomatic corps was the issue of economic growth across the continent, which he said was very much on top of South Africa's agenda as South Africa approaches that forthcoming G20 summit that will be taking place in Turkey. Minister, sustainable economic growth across the continent. The President emphasized that, saying it was indeed a priority for South Africa as it approaches the G20 summit.
Indeed, it is. We already have had a meeting of finance ministers in Turkey, and now in preparation for the summit, for the upcoming summit. And the issue of growth is at the top of agenda, not only for Africa, but for the entire G20 countries. Because at the end of the day, you would understand that we are going through a period where there is the rebalancing of the Asian market, but at the same time, we are awaiting eagerly the movements also in one of the largest economies, the US. We are awaiting what the Federal Reserve is going to be coming with Thursday. That announcement is critical for us, but Africa as a market, as it said, of a billion population, that population is quite significant, both in terms of us advancing into Africa, which we have identified as a key area, but also the entire world looking into Africa as an opportunity and a destination for future investment.
Well, another issue he raised was the reform of international institutions. Presumably he was referring to the IMF, the World Bank, and so on. Absolutely.
From the finance track, the IMF is the one critical one. We have already a pending matter of the 2010 quota reform, where we want to increase the voice of the continent and the region, in particular the sub-Saharan Africa, which is awaiting ratification by Congress. At the moment, we have been assured, today is actually the 15th, Congress is actually supposed to pronounce on that, and the resolution that was taken at the latest G20 was that in the absence of that ratification, we now are beginning to look at the alternate reform processes in order to be able to increase the voice of the developing world.
Now, from what we were told a short while ago, there's going to be these informal interactions taking place next door, which is where what we dragged you out of. Do you expect the issue of our relationship with China to come, under any particular focus from the diplomats that you'll be chit-chatting with and perhaps comparing some notes as well?
I've actually been talking to a number of them already. We've been talking to Finland, we're talking to Germany. We also have, I was talking to China as well, Singapore. A number of those economies that have a particular interest, both in South Africa and the continent. And some of them are already doing business already in the continent. But in doing so, we also are engaging in terms of identifying opportunities also for our engagement with them in terms of opening up for South Africa. Like Singapore, I recently attended the signing ceremony for one of our mining companies, signing a partnership agreement with their sovereign wealth fund, Temasek, and the local mining companies. So there are, areas of mutual benefit that actually are of interest both to ourselves and the other economies.
Have they raised any issues, concerns? We're talking about this while through the parliamentary process we're seeing the promotion and protection of investment investment bill going through a parliamentary process. Have they raised any particular concerns or issues, your Germanys, your Finland, that you've just been engaging with?
Indeed, they do raise that in terms of seeking information and clarity. But the good thing that they all applaud us of is the transparency in the manner in which we process our bills. Because as those become topical, it is precisely for the reason and the fact that they are already in the public domain for engagement, for consultation, in order to be able that what we arrive at is something that has taken on board the interests of the country, but also of all the other stakeholders.
What about the Americans? Have you had any engagements with them? Because there are some people who think the reason, the AGOA conversations have been stuck on chickens, is because of perhaps the unhappiness with us sort of moving closer and closer towards China, and perhaps an impression being created that we're moving away from our traditional sort of business partners like the US, like the UK, for example.
Again, what is of particular interest is that all economies realize that South Africa is an economy to reckon with. And it is for that reason that they would actually seek a stronger engagement with us, because unless you have that strong engagement with South Africa, your trade in Africa actually doesn't count for much. And it is for that reason that I think it's not only America that seeks these engagements with us, but at the end of the day, what we are looking at is we want to arrive at a dispensation that is of benefit to both ourselves and whichever country that we engage with. The issue of AGOA indeed has been long drawn out, because everyone wants maximum benefit out of the process. And we have stood our ground. The US has also stood their ground. At the moment, I think there's this issue also with avian flu, and that is why these engagements need to continue to a point where we find common ground.
Lastly, and very briefly, Minister, the issue of visas, is that part of the agenda? Is that part of the issues that people continue to raise with you?
Look, openly we have indicated that there is a process to show that government takes the matter seriously, that there is a process, and the government will actually be pronouncing as soon as the process of looking at the consequences, unintended consequences of our visa regulations, trying to find the right balance between the security and also opening for trade and investment.
Minister, thank you very much for your time. The Minister of Finance, Minister Nhlanhla Nene, is speaking to us, or just reflecting on some of the economic issues that have been or are being raised. And as he told us, he has had engagements with some countries like Finland, like Germany, and he doesn't think that there are issues that are beyond what South Africa can handle, or that South Africa isn't busy resolving. For now, it's back to you, Alicia.